Hello, friends. Part two of our podcast on Chapter P in the AP Stats book. We're right down here in this third bullet. Discuss the advantages of using available data. Available data means someone else has collected it. There's all kinds of government and educational and private websites that gather data and make it public. Gathering your own data without bias is time consuming and it's expensive. And so if you can use someone else's data, that saves you time and money. But it's also very easy to be biased. If you are a cancer hospital and you're gathering data, you're very likely to have some built in bias that shows that cancer research is more important and deserves more funding, or that the problem is pervasive, which it is. But your research, if that's where your heart is, um, it'd be very easy to subconsciously or unconsciously bias the results in a different direction. If you were a tobacco company and you were gathering data about cancer, you'd be likely to build in some bias the other way to make it seem like less of a problem than it really is. So, available data is something that is data that someone else has collected, and the reason it's a good thing to use is that it saves you time, money, and reduces bias. Three main types of statistical designs are surveys, which you should all be familiar with. Someone asks questions. Now, it's proven that if you ask questions face to face versus in a written survey versus a telephone call, you will get different results. So, surveys have their place and have a certain value, but you also have to realize that they have some shortcomings as well. Experiments are the one type of data collection where you can attempt to prove cause and effect. Experiments are, as you basically, we're going to get to this in a minute, but they have a control and they have a treatment, and you get results where you can compare what happened with the treatment against a group that didn't have the treatment. Observational studies would be something like sitting at a stop sign and just watching how many cars actually come to a complete stop and how many don't, and you could get a percentage of each. Or just counting how many people walk into some building with dyed hair. You're just watching what happens. There's no treatment. You're just observing. And again, these things have their places. There are people that argue just by you being there collecting data, you change the environment. All right, so observational studies also have a place. When we are trying to arrive at conclusions in statistics, we are trying to gather a body of evidence, and that could include the anecdotal stories that we talked about earlier, experiments, surveys, observational studies. We're trying to reach a conclusion, and the more different types of statistics and data gathering that we can do, the more confident we can be in whatever result we're putting forward. Um, there are all kinds of examples of poorly collected data. Um, Basically, things like a call in show. They did a survey, a radio station did a survey, call in and tell us whether you think Elvis is alive or not. And 56% of the people that called in said they thought Elvis was still alive. And that's because the only people that are going to call in to a show are people that have a particularly strong opinion on whatever the issue is. So you're not going to get good, honest data that represents the entire population. Clearly, 56% of the population doesn't believe Elvis is still alive. So there's a lot of examples of bad data collecting, and we'll go through those during the year, especially during experimental design. But what you need to get good data is a random sample from a population. And that just means essentially you give everyone in the population an equal chance of being selected. And the population, I should mention here, is everyone in the group that you're trying to learn about. So it could be all college students, or all people in Maine, or all refrigerators produced at a certain factory, or all fish in a particular body of water. The population could be anything. And to gather good information about a population, you take a random sample. All right, continue in the next podcast.